Hello everyone, and welcome to the December Release Jam. I can't believe 2023 is already coming to an end, and we have a packed set of features and announcements to show you to close this year, which showcases the immense dedication of our team. I am your host Kevin Blanco, and I am extremely excited for today. So without further ado, let's delve into the highlights. First up, I am delighted to unveil the newest enhancements to the UI layout. Experience a significant overhaul of the application navigation, empowering developers and application builders with greater control over pages, widgets, data sources, libraries, and configurations. Next up on the agenda is our brand new integration with OpenAI. Developers can now seamlessly incorporate advanced AI functionalities into their applications using chat completion, embeddings, and vision APIs to seamlessly integrate AI actions, leveraging multimodal data with your internal tools. Third, join us for a comprehensive look at UI component updates. We'll explore enhancements to existing components and introduce exciting new components. And last but not least, let's talk about a much anticipated feature, the partial import-export. With this new capability, you can selectively import and export specific portions of your data. This streamlined solution provides users with precision and control, facilitating the seamless movement of content between projects and applications. So get ready to witness the evolution of Appsmith for building enterprise internal platforms. Let's jump into it. Alright, let's first start with the big overhaul UI changes. Appsmith IDE is modular, scalable, and is one of the fastest ways to build apps in the world of internal business tools. And our goal as a team is to create a structure that adheres to the underlying information architecture to bring clarity and efficiency for all of our users. This is the first step of Appsmith to provide an efficient IDE that enables users to quickly navigate, discover features, configure entities, connect widgets, and accomplish their goals with minimal effort and cognitive load. If you have been using Appsmith lately for the last 2 weeks, or updated your self-hosted instance, you have probably already noticed some of the UI changes. So let's take a look at them. The first thing is probably the biggest change is the sidebar navigation, where we have split data, editor, libraries, and configuration. So let's first take a look at the data portion. We have split completely the data section so you can have access to all of your data sources and have a bigger and much easier way to access everything related to your data. So here I have, for example, a lot of data sources that I have created for you to take a look at it, and it's much easier to navigate through all of them. If I click on a given data source, I will be able, for example, to see its schema. In this case, for example, I have a Postgres database data source, and I can see that it has the public.users table, and I can sneak peek on the data for that specific table. From here, I can do certain things. For example, access the configurations, or I can create a new query for this specific data source. I can edit the data source, or I can generate a new page based upon this table right from here, from the data source. And it will generate the CRUD page for this specific table, for this specific data source. So this is the biggest change you have noticed in terms of the data. Now let's talk about the different libraries. We used to have a small section where you can see the libraries, the JavaScript libraries installed and install new ones, but it was kind of hard to access and understand how that happens. So we have separated this on the libraries section, and now here you will be able to see the installed libraries, and also you will be able to create and add a new library. By using the plus icon, you will be able to download some of the recommended libraries that we give, or just install using the library URL from here. Now, before we go into the editor, which is probably the biggest change, let's take a look at the settings. You used to see the settings by clicking here on the top and going to the settings, and then it will showcase on the right of the screen. But now you can easily access the settings of the application on this gear icon. From there, you will see the application settings. For example, the general settings for the name of the icon, the share and embed controls, the theme controls where you can, for example, define your theme colors, fonts, borders, etc. Also the navigation. Here you will be able to understand how your application navigation will behave and look. And from there you will be able to, for example, define if you want the orientation to be on the top or on the side, if you want it to be stacked or inline of the application, the background color, the logo, and other settings in terms of the navigation. And last but not least, here you will be able to import another application in case you want to bring that up. And we'll talk about partial import export just in a bit. And from there, you will be able to click on any of the existing pages that you have on your application and control the settings for each of the page. For example, here I can control the page name and the URL for this page. And if I want this page to be part of the navigation, or if I wanted to set it as the home page. Now let's go to the editor. This is the section where we will be able to build the visual aspect of our application and also the widgets, the queries, and the JavaScript files. In terms of the pages, things will probably look very familiar to you. Here we have the pages, very similar to how it has been over the last months. And once you click on a page, you will be able to see the widgets for that page. You will be able to also select from the widget catalog any widget and drag and drop as usual. And you will see the different queries for this specific page. So in this example, I have a classifier OpenAI query, which we'll talk about later. And I can see that I also have my demo database, which is a query to a Postgres database. And I have this JSON object, which handles some integration with the classifier and the UI updates. So this is the queries, the JavaScript files, and the widgets for this specific page. So as you can see, we're making navigation much simpler, and it's going to be easier for you to find things. Also remember, we have our search box here on the top, where you can, for example, find and access other things, although you're not over there. So for example, I could try to find the users data set because I know that there is a users, and then it will take me directly to that specific data source that I found. And that's the same case. You can find JavaScript objects, you can find widgets, you can find anything related to your page within that big search on the top. So that's it for now in terms of the UI overhaul. Please let us know if you have feedback, if you have feel that it's much easier for you to drive on your navigation and your page. And if you have any feedback, again, let us know. This is the first step. For next year, you will see more overhaul changes. We want to avoid contextual switching. So you will be able to, for example, in the future, build queries as you, for example, see your page UI and so on and so forth. Our team is working hard to understand what's the best scenario for the UX and UI, and more changes to come on this manner. So now let's go to the OpenAI integration and we'll delve into that specific area. All right, now let's talk about AI. It's no secret that AI has been the main topic for 2023. The technological development and increase is unprecedented, and Appsmith has been incorporated support for AI at many different levels. For example, you can use the Appsmith AI assistant to generate database queries, JavaScript code, widget logic, and so much more. And we are delighted to announce the official support for OpenAI as a data source, which you can integrate in your application and build powerful AI-based enterprise experiences. So how do you do that? Once you are in your Appsmith application, you can go to the data section and you will be able to find the OpenAI integration, clicking the plus icon and finding OpenAI. Here you have OpenAI. So once you select OpenAI, we're going to have the authentication method, which is the only one that we support right now, is the barrier token, and you can find your API key in your OpenAI account information. So you will paste this, the API over here, you will save the configuration, and the API key will be encrypted and stored and never retrieved again. So I already have my OpenAI integration here, and I don't want you to see my API key. So after you save, this is pretty much what you have to do. The OpenAI Datasource is ready for you to start using it. So now let's build something with it. If you go back to the editor here on the page, we have different mechanisms to create OpenAI integrations. The first one is the chat completion API that allows you to generate human-like text responses based on your input. Very similar to ChatGPT. You ask for something, ChatGPT will retrieve the textual response. That's the chat completion API. Super simple, and I'll show you one example in a second. The second one is embeddings API, and that helps us to create numerical representation of text, which can be used for tasks such as semantic search or measuring text similarity. And then we also have the vision API, which helps us to analyze and make intelligent predictions within your applications. So I really want you to see the power of the vision API with a very cool example that takes no longer than 5 minutes. We can explore the chat completion and the embeddings API in a following session only focused on OpenAPI that we will have in January. So the first thing I want you to see is how easy we can integrate the vision API with the camera widget from Appsmith. So let's find for the camera widget, let's drag and drop, and this will have access to our camera. There it is. Hello. And from here we can do a couple of things. The first one is that basically the image component have an event. And the idea that I want to show you is that when the image is captured, I want to grab this widget image, send it back to the Vision API, and for Vision API to analyze what's on this image and tell me what is on this image. It will analyze different things of my environment, such as the microphone, the glasses, the guitar. That's the expectation. That can be used for many things. For example, it can help people on the field. Maybe you have an enterprise that has people on field that takes photos and needs analyzed. You can use this Vision API analysis image API to analyze what's on the image and many other business use cases. So now that we have our widget here, what we can do is we can build our query. So let's go to the queries section and let's create a new OpenAI query. Now this OpenAI, we're gonna call it Vision API. And here we can select what command we want to use. Remember I explained to you chat, embeddings, and vision. Let's use the vision one. And now we can select which model of that specific command we want to use. Right now, ChatGPT 4 only have the vision preview, but for example, if we select chat, we have the ability to select ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo or GPT-4 or Turbo Instruct, what have you. But in this case, for vision right now, as this video is being recorded on December, ChatGPT 4 Vision Preview, it's the only model that we can use. Then we want to define the maximum number of tokens to generate in the chat completion. Now, I've seen that 16 is a very low number because it won't tell us a lot about the image. So I'm going to say 124 max tokens. That's a very good number to have a good explanation of what's on the image. Now let's define the other couple of things. The first one is the system messages. This is how we can give instructions to the Vision API. And then user messages. That's where we will include the image that we take from the camera widget. So let's add a new system message. And here, for example, we will tell exactly this Vision API how to behave. And this placeholder that we add here is a great example. As an OCR expert, your skills are unparalleled. Respond with just the text in the image. So let's say, for example, we want to build a receipt analyzer. That could be very useful. But for now, I'm going to keep it simple. All I'm going to say is tell me what's on the image. That's it. Super simple. And now let's add the user message. Here we will pass the image from the camera widget into the Vision API. So I'm not going to pass text, I'm going to pass image. And here we can bind data. This is the powerful of Appsmith. You can just bind the data from the camera widget. And how do we grab the image from the camera widget? We use the parameter called image data URL. Now, image data URL is the actual base64 encoded image. So we're literally going to pass the base64 image as a parameter to the Vision API query. And that's all we have to do. So now, and lastly, the temperature. The temperature is something you can define depending on how random you want the output to be. In this case, like we say here, higher values like 0.8 will make the output more random, while lower values like 0.2 will make it more focused and deterministic. I'm going to keep it to 0.2. I could keep it to 0 as well, but just for the sake of testing and see what exactly retrieves back. So now let's go back to our widget camera, and we have to bind the event of taking the picture to actually calling Vision API and passing the image information to the Vision API. So that's super simple. All we have to do is on the event, on image capture event, we're going to find our query. And remember, we called it Vision API. And that's all we have to do. For example, we could do some on success and on failure. I'm going to do that on success. I'm going to show a alert saying that the success image analyzed, and on failure, I'm going to say the same. I'm going to show a alert, but in this case, it's going to be an error alert, saying error on analyzing. And that's it. So what we could do right now is we can take a photo. I'm just going to do this. I'm going to take a photo, and once we click on this yellow checkbox button, the on image capture event will be triggered. And that's it. So right now we can't see anything because we haven't bind the response from the Vision API query into the widget, into the canvas, sorry. So there you go. The image was analyzed correctly, but we can't see the response. So let's bind the response into an actual text widget. So I'm going to find just a text widget. I'm going to put it here, and I'm going to say, I'm going to remove this. And all I have to do is the name of our data source, which is Vision API, that data, and then the data have certain objects or certain information inside of it. The one we care is an array called choices. And choices is an array, and normally we want to grab the first option of the choices, the first position. Then we have message, and last but not least, we have the actual content of the message. So let's take a look at this, what the message was for the picture we just took. It says the image shows a person giving a thumbs up sign. Great. The individual is wearing sunglasses and headphones. Kind of accurate, but not much. And there's a microphone in front of them, suggesting they might be engaged in an activity like podcasting, streaming, or recording. In the background, there are decorative items on the wall, including what appears to be a model airplanes and a star-shaped object. That's the guitar and the airplanes. The lighting has a warm tone, and there is a neon sign with the word on air visible, reinforcing the idea that the person is involved in like a broadcasting or recording session. That's not entirely accurate because we don't have an on-air like neon sign. Might be confused by the neon light here, the purple one that I have. But we can, for example, go back to the data source, to the query and adjust, for example, the temperature. I'm just gonna leave it to 0 in case I want something more realistic, more deterministic, more focused, and not something super random. For example, that on air sign was something a little bit random, and if we increase the value, it's gonna be even more random. We can make a test and see how it behaves. And here we can see the structure of the response. As you can see, we access the data. We have some information about the prompt and the model and when it was created. Then we have the array of choices, like I mentioned. And each object inside that array, we have a message, which has a role and a content. For this specific scenario, for Vision API, we will always only have one message per choice. So one other thing I want to do here is, let me put this here. On the settings, I don't want this query to load on page load, because we're going to be calling this data source, or sorry, this query every time we take a picture, but not on page load. So let's turn it off. Go back to our widget, and now let's deploy our application. There you go. I'm going to do something more crazy here. I'm going to put my tongue out, like a crazy photo, you know, and let's upload that photo. Please don't make a meme out of this photo. So it says the image shows a person giving the thumbs up with one head and sticking out their tongue in a playful manner. That's kind of good. They are wearing sunglasses and a black t-shirt. The person is standing in front of the microphone, suggesting we'll be recording audio or video, possibly on the podcast, music, or audio multimedia content. In the background, they have decorative items on the wall, including model airplanes and guitar. Now it found the guitar, which indicates a personal space with creative or hobbyist interest. The lighting is warm, and the overall atmosphere seems casual and friendly. There you go. We adjusted the temperature to 0, and it's more deterministic. It didn't invent it that I had like an on-air type of announcement, which was inaccurate. So there you go. If you make the temperature on a higher value, it will be more random, and if you make it to 0, it will be more accurate. So this is one example over here. Look at that. In just few minutes, like 10 minutes, we just built an application that analyzes images, that uses the camera widget back to the Vision API and analyzing what's on the image. Like I said, we will have a more in-depth Vision API session on January. Stay tuned for that. But I do want to show you some of the use cases our team has been building. Let me give you an example here. We have this sample of a restaurant review page. We have a data source storing database in a Postgres database, some reviews about our restaurant. For example, we have here the New York style pancakes were fluffy and mouth-watering. So what we did is that using the chat completion API is going to analyze these insights, the restaurant reviews insights. And once we click this button, what's going to happen is, first of all, it's going to analyze the sentiment of each of these reviews, and it's going to tell us what item the review is for. So in this case, the New York style pancakes is talking about the pancakes. So here you go, there you go, analyze that it was pancakes, were fluffy and mouth-watering. The sentiment is positive. And it did the same for every single review on this item. So let's say here we have a negative. The fries were soggy, cold, and over-salted, terrible. And yes, it analyzed that the review is about the fries and the sentiment is negative. So there you go. This is one example that in this case, just to give you a sneak peek, it uses the classifier, which basically is telling to analyze the sentiment of this review and classify it as a positive or negative, and just respond only with positive and negative. This is the classifier. And then we have a JSON object, which is going to grab the table data and is going to call the classifier for each of the elements on the table data, is going to run it, is going to pass the review, and is going to abstract the sentiment from that review using the classifier function. And there you go. Here's a combination of OpenAI, a database on Postgres, and JavaScript, and binding with components on the UI, And that's one of the examples I wanted to show you in sneak peek. We're going to go over some of them. We have Invoice Analyzer, GPT-Smith, iframe code generator, and much more examples that we are preparing for you for January. And we will go over all of them in depth so you can see all of the different capabilities you have in terms of the OpenAI data source. So there you go. We just built something pretty incredible, awesome, and very interesting as well. Like I said, I hope you didn't make a meme out of that picture, but if you did, just send it along. So let's go to the next item, which is partial import export. All right, now let's talk about partial import and export. This is a feature that has been highly requested, and it's very simple to use, and I wanted to show you. So gone are the days of exporting entire applications when all you need is a specific widget, page, or data source. So with partial import and export, you have the power to selectively choose what elements to export from your app. This level of precision ensures a lightweight and focused export, allowing you to seamlessly share, collaborate, and integrate specific components across different projects. So I have here the application I worked for, the Vision API that we just used for OpenAI. And let's say I want to export this application or a portion of the application. Normally, the only mechanism we allowed was to export the entire application. So it will download a JSON file with everything. The components, the queries, the JavaScript objects. So in certain scenarios, developers might need to grab a portion of an application that has tons of data sources and widgets and pages and so on and so forth, and you only needed certain portions. So now all you have to do is in your application, in the page that you want to migrate, this is at the page level that you want to export. All you have to do is click those three icons over there, and you will see the export option. You can also import from there. So let's first export, and then we will import this in another application. So when you click export, here you will be able to select exactly what you want per each of the different categories that Appsmith has, which is JavaScript objects, databases, queries, custom libraries, and widgets. I don't have any JavaScript object in this particular application, but I will see all of the different JavaScript objects, and I can checkbox those that I want to export. Here in databases, I'm going to export the OpenAI database. On queries, I can export the query. Now, for example, if I export the Vision API query, you can see that it depends on the OpenAI database. So if I select the Vision API query, although I did not select the OpenAI database, it will be part of it because it is basically a dependency to have the Vision API. Now, in terms of custom libraries, I don't have anything on this project, but if I would, definitely I will be able to select any custom JavaScript library that I imported into this application to be part of the export. And now widgets, I will be able to see all of the widgets that are on my application. Now we built this sample app which only has the camera widget and the text widget. So for the sake of testing, I'm just going to select the camera but not the text, so we can see the actual export works the way we expect. So let's do that, and all it's going to happen is it's going to download a JSON file. And now let's go to the dashboard, and I'm going to just, for the sake of testing again, create a new application. This is a blank application, but I can do this on an existing application. Now it's important to note that only certain level of permissions have the ability to import and export, partially or totally. So if you do not see that permission on your end, or you do not see that option, it might be because you don't have permission on that specific application. So for example, this AI use cases that we have, this is not an application that belongs to me. I was given access so I can view and deploy, but I don't have full control of this application. So I can't partially export certain portions of this application. So that is why it's important to know that if you do not see that option, it's probably because of the permissions issue. So here I have this blank application, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to click here and I'm going to say import. Remember that the partial import and export is at the page level. So that's the place from where you select either an import or an export. So I'm going to say import, and here I have the JSON file. This is number 2. And there you go. Everything has been brought up from the other application into this new application. And as you can see, we have the query and we have only the camera widget. The text widget we did not select it from the other application. As you can see here, we have the text, but on this one, the text is not there. And that's how partial import and export works. Super simple yet powerful, and I know there is a feature that has been highly requested, and I know that some of you will definitely get advantage of. So now let's jump into the next category, or the next thing I want to talk, which is UI enhancements to existing widgets and new widgets. All right, now let's talk about some new UI enhancements, new features, new widgets. And to do that, I'm going to create a new blank page in my application, and I'm going to drag and drop one of the most used widgets, which is the table one. Now, for the sake of testing, I'm going to be connecting to some sample data. Remember that we can use the movies sample MongoDB database. And I'm going to be using the movies table, and I'm going to find the title is going to be the searchable column, and I'm going to connect the data. Super simple, super straightforward. And one of the things I wanted to show you is, now that I have this table of movies here, let me make this bigger so you can take a look at it. We have certain information about movies, the title, the genres, the both average, tagline, etc. So for example, I'm going to be taking this both count, which is a numeric value column. And what I'm going to do for the both count is show you the new type of column type that we have for the table, which is the currency. Now, if you have, you're going to be displaying currency values on a table, you have the ability to select the column type as currency. And then you have different currency types to select from. As you can see, we have plenty of different options to select for the currency type. Let's say I want to use the euro, and then you can define how many decimals are going to be allowed, 1, 2, or 3. And then you can also define, for example, the notation, if it's going to be standard or compact. So for example, if you have very long numeric values, compact might make sense, but if you want to keep it standard, that's also another thing you can keep. So as you can see, this new column type is going to allow you to define a currency type and define the currency options for your desired column type. So there you go. That's one small thing I wanted to show you, which is very important for one of the most used widgets, which is the table widget. Now let me show you about the next widget that I want to talk about, which is the checkbox group. Now let me find it here and drag and drop. And as you can see, you can have certain options in an own checkbox group. You can define these options manually. You can see that by default, it's going to have these 3 options right here, and you can have another option. So this is hard coded or manually defined. But the cool stuff is that you can also do this dynamically. So for example, as you can see in this table here, we have the genre for each of the different movies. So for example, this one right here have the name action, for example, adventure and science fiction. So those are the 3 different genre this movie belongs, called One Will Fall. So I want to use those dynamically from the different movies I select. I want to be able to see the option, the genres from that movie into the checkbox group. So I can do that dynamically by selecting the JavaScript option here. And if you don't know exactly how to do it, because you might not be super efficient with JavaScript, remember that we always have the Appsmith AI feature, which is still in beta, but it's super useful, and you can ask whatever you want. So in this case, what I'm going to say is, using the table one, that selected row, that genre, which is basically where the value I'm going to be grabbing from, map the name as the options for this specific widget. Now remember that one of the cool stuff about Appsmith AI Code Assistant is that it's not just a random or very broad prompt. It's specifically designed for understanding the Appsmith widgets, data sources, JavaScript objects, etc. So there you go. Here it created a JavaScript sentence, which I'm going to be using. And now whenever I select, let's see if that works here. And let's also do this here, that name. And this one is going to be generate that name. There you go. So I had to tweak it a little bit here, so it makes sense for my data structure. It was almost there, almost perfect, but it definitely gave me the structure that I needed. So as you can see, what I'm doing is I'm using the generate.name as the value and the key for each individual checkbox in the checkbox group. So now if I select a movie, here you can see that it's going to be updating from the genre of that specific movie. It's going to be applying those genre into the label of the checkbox group. And then you can have different events on this checkbox group. So for example, you could for example, depending on the selection of the users, you could have events that respond to a database query or to a JavaScript object, etc., as any other widget in Appsmith. So there you go. That's one of the other components or widgets that I wanted to show you some updates and changes. The other one, it's very similar, but is different in shape or form, which is the menu button. Now the menu button is a button that basically is going to show us a menu, and you can have as many items as you want. Now, very similar to the checkbox group, you can define the options on each of the elements for this button group to be manually defined. As you can see, Appsmith by default is going to have 3 elements here, and I can define each of these individual elements actions, options, styling, etc. So for example, I can say what the label is going to be and what's going to happen when somebody clicks on this specific menu item. And the same for everyone, but I can do it statically, as you can see here, but I can also do it dynamically, and it's going to be very similar. So for example, I could do pretty much the same as we did with the checkbox group. I'm going to say table 1, that selected row, that genres. And now what's going to happen is that's where the source data is going to be. Now, remember that the genres is an array. Now I have to tell each individual menu item what value is going to grab from each object of the array to map to the menu options. So I'm going to click configure, and all I have to do for the label is do current item, which is the mechanism that Appsmith maps each of the individual objects within the array of genres, and then I can just do dot name, which is the property of the current item that I want to show. And I can define click events for each of those. So now, since this is being applied to all of the menu button groups, the on-click event is going to be the same for every option in the menu. So since this case is dynamic, for example, we are feeding the menu button group with the genres from the table, the on-click event being fired for elements on this menu button are going to be the same. So we have to have, for example, a generic function that is going to manage every single click for every single item. So, in contrast to the standard or hard-coded defined, you can have an on-click event for each menu button element. But in this case, since we're doing it dynamically, we will have to append the same on-click event to all of the ones. So you can have logic, for example, to grab the genre name or something like that, to have custom logic, but just to keep that in mind. So it's pretty similar to the checkbox group. When I click on any element on the table, that's going to be updating. So for example, for this specific movie, we have all of these genres, which is animation, adventure, family, action, etc. And that is going to be also feeding the elements on this menu button. So there you go. That's some of the things that I wanted to show you in terms of updates to existing components, for example, the table widget, and new components, for example, the checkbox group and the menu button group. So there you go. That's what I wanted to show you in terms of new UI enhancements and widgets changes. And that's it for now. We are coming to an end for the last release jam of the year. But that's not the last event of the year. We still have 2 more events. Next week, join me and our co-founder Nikhil for a full session around Appsmith using Appsmith, where we showcase the powerful apps we use internally using our own product. And the following Thursday, it's going to be the last live coding event of the year. And we have a joint collaboration with Baserow. And we'll have Baserow's co-founder joining us to build something you definitely don't want to miss. So as we look ahead of the 2024, we are thrilled to share that the best is yet to come. We have an exciting lineup of features and enhancements that will take Appsmith to new heights. From more powerful integrations to enhanced customization options, our team has been hard at work to bring you a low-code platform that exceeds your expectations. So I can't wait for next year. See you next week. Bye bye.